Since I started this channel, I've had a few subscribers ask me, why are you doing it? What's your motivation in giving away trade secrets? You must be busy running the business, so why are you spending time doing this? And also people will ask me, what's my backstory? I think because a lot of people come to this line of work, by which I mean fitted furniture, but also general woodworking, from different backgrounds. Some people train in it to start with. Some people have had a different career, but always had a love for woodworking and decide to take the leap to doing it as a career. So there's this phrase that says the most personal is the most universal. And I think we all find interest in other people's stories if they're told authentically and without being forced upon us. So because people have showed interest, I've been wanting to tell my story for a bit. In fact, I've tried doing it about 3 times and ditched the footage because I just didn't feel I was striking the right note. I don't want to be too self-serving. I don't want to ramble on too long. It's ultimately for you. I recognize that this channel is, if you're going to watch it, it's got to have some kind of interest for you. So it's not about me, except to the extent that anything I share might relate to your work, your life, and your journey. I've put this triangle up here to represent 2 different things which I'm going to talk about. I'm going to start with the triangle of work-life balance and work reward. It's something my brother once told me, that in any work situation, you've got 3 ideals. So let's say you've got your job satisfaction, your life balance, and your time with your family, and the financial reward. And ideally you'd have a bit of all 3, but you're very lucky to get 2 out of the 3. So very often you'll just be kind of one of the lines. You might connect the 2. You might have job satisfaction and great pay, but you have to work so hard and long hours that you don't get the time with your family, or vice versa. You can figure out the combinations. I don't know if you've ever asked yourself, what makes your heart sing? I don't know if that seems like a corny question. I've heard it put that way once, and I relate to it, this idea that there's certain things that you do that make you feel alive and happy, and it's almost effortless that you can work hard and give some really good value to the world, shall we say, to people that are interested in it. For me, I think part of that is YouTubing, interestingly. I've always had a range of interests. I certainly like woodworking, but I particularly get a buzz out of talking about it and getting the feedback. Now, I don't want to be so much of a helper to others that I would fit with, there's this phrase I heard that says, you can tell those who live to help others by the hunted look on the faces of the others. So to the extent that I'm helping others through this, I hope to be more of an enabler. And what guides my output is me thinking, what would I have liked to come across when I was starting out? Wouldn't it have been great if someone had told me, this is how you fit this piece of hardware, or these are the challenges of running a business at this particular stage, so that I was a little bit forewarned. Now, the other use of this triangle, so this is a separate illustration, is about the value of YouTube and communicating on YouTube and generally online. So now picture the triangle as an area of knowledge. So let's say fitted furniture. At the top, there'll be the real experts, and at the bottom, there'll be the masses of people that know next to nothing about this particular subject. The way I see it, I, perhaps like you, are maybe around about in the middle. I've built up quite a lot of knowledge, so I know more than a lot of people, but less than a good number of experts. And I hope that I'm moving further to that pinnacle of specialism in my particular field. What's great about YouTube is if I just start telling you what I know, you may be just a little bit further down, or you may be on a level with me. And I may connect with you better than someone at the top, one of the experts who is so far down the line, so far removed that it's hard for them to even remember the things that were once difficult that they now take for granted. So that's the model and the great thing about communicating and teaching through YouTube. So this question, why do I do what I do? I do get a kick out of it, and I do want to give back stuff that I've learned. I think though that for most people, what we choose to do, how we choose to spend our time, it's a mixture of the way we're wired and often our life experience. And very often the thing that motivates us most is to do with a personal pain point, an experience we've gone through. And this is one I want to share with you. I'm going to keep you a little bit in suspense because I've been meaning also just to use this video to update you on some things about where the business is at that I've not so far told you. And this all relates to how we move forward. So very briefly, we are getting a CNC machine, and I'm going to be showing that on camera towards the end of the year. It's a new design, a new product. It's coming freshly off the production line, invented and made by a guy in Sheffield. I'm relaunching the games table, or planning to, which you may have wondered what's been happening with that. Perhaps look back on videos. In fact, I don't know if there is a video about it, but I've got a separate linked channel called the Freebird games table, and I'm planning to relaunch that. To help that, I've been accepted on something called the Y Accelerator, which is a funded training program, which is going to take up a lot of my time, Mondays and Fridays, and should jumpstart getting a really good business plan together to make that whole games table thing viable. I've also had to let go our drawings guy, Graham, which was a very difficult decision. He's done excellent work, and he has to some extent done himself out of a job, which we knew might happen because he's been improving our systems to the point where there's things I can do better now because of his software and drawing work than I could before he was on board. And it was a kind of hard-nosed business decision that doesn't come easily to me, but I had to just decide that the amount I was spending for having him on board 4 days a week wasn't fully justified. Linked to that, changes that are happening in the business are, I used to take a book called The E-Myth as my blueprint for the business, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, which is all about systemizing and building the business beyond yourself. So you have to document what you do and teach it to others. I regret trying to apply those principles so early on. I think my business would be in a healthier place if I had focused just more on my own skill and effort earlier on, rather than trying to sort of think ahead too much. The blueprint I'm now using for the business is a book called Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. And that fed into me realizing I've just got to cut my overheads and get some real profit in as a priority. So that's a little bit about where the business is at, and all those different things going on are one reason why I suppose I'm wanting to be honest with you. And by the end of this video, I want to talk a little bit about the way forward and get your feedback on that. So before that, how did I get here, and what are the answers to those questions about my motivation and my story? Well, around about 3 years ago, my second child was born, Isaac, and he was born 3 months premature with a pretty catastrophic bleed on the brain. This has led to long-term disability, including cerebral palsy, vision problems, and general developmental delay. And he was in intensive care for about 3 months. He's had repeated brain surgery. When this happened, it was pretty devastating, as you could imagine. I remember probably just under 3 years ago, being sat at my desk, and I had just taken on 2 members of staff, the guy I've had to let go and the lady that's still working 2 days a week in the office. And I was thinking, how do I go on? I had already, prior to this event, already felt at full stretch. I'm sure many of you watching this, running a business, can understand. It's quite a lonely path. A lot of people don't understand. They make assumptions about what you're earning and the benefits of being self-employed, and often that's not the reality. So I had already felt I was carrying a level of stress that seemed intolerable, and then my son was born with long-term disability and with big question marks over whether he would live, whether he would make it. And there was genuine trauma for all involved, particularly my wife. So there I was, just crying at my desk because I was completely overwhelmed. But I remember thinking that if we don't move forward now, we'll only move backwards. And now of all times, I need to build a future for my family. I need to know that I can provide for them, and I need to not just ditch this business, which was very tempting, to get some kind of job and security, because a business could be the way to have the flexibility and the income for whatever the future may hold. I think when something like that happens, you realize that you are so vulnerable and so fragile, that life can throw anything at you, and your assumptions, I think we all, when we're young, have assumptions about how life will be. Your assumptions can't be taken for granted, and you have to be prepared. So that was the big event that I think has informed a lot of what I do. And I think what I'm realizing recently, looking again at how I run my business and why I run my business the way I do, is that a lot of what I've done has been very motivated by fear. Before Isaac came along, I broke my foot and realized my physical vulnerability. If this business relies entirely on me being physically fit to get the work done and get the money in, then you never know what's going to happen. A couple of months after Isaac came along, I had a herniated disc, which can be partly stress-induced, and was in excruciating pain. I'm sure there are people watching this that have experienced that, and I could not work. I couldn't sleep. Certainly couldn't do any physical work. So again, I felt vulnerable. But what I've realized just recently is that I think I allowed these sorts of events to inform my approach to the business a little bit too much. And it was always about contingency and how can I set things up just in case. And in a way, that's an understandable reaction to difficult life events, but you just never know what's going to happen. And I think you have to just work your hardest and do what you can while you can. And I just feel like there's been a shift lately where I've brought it back, I've scaled it back. It's just me and Brady, with a bit of office support from my wife and Camilla. And we're just going to work as hard as we can, stay focused, not have all the distractions of communication to other people, and let it grow that way. Maybe put some of the systemization and slightly kind of fear and caution driven thinking to the back burner for a bit, because I really enjoy just doing the work. And I know that I don't ultimately want to run a business that is big and makes me a manager. This is something I know many in this line of work have wrestled with and come to the same conclusion. So YouTube plays into that, because if I can build a following on YouTube and a community and on Instagram, that opens up other options. If my back does go again or some other catastrophic event happens, then I might just have options, contacts, a network, which could lead to other sources of income. So why do I do YouTube? I think my personal situation has given me this real passion to help others in their unique situation, whatever that might be, to try and get that balance right. I want to take people on this journey where I'm trying to figure this stuff out. I'm trying to provide for my family. And I take great pleasure in feeling that I might, at the same time, be helping someone else with whatever they're going through, because people are going through all sorts of different things. I want to build a community, and I don't want it to be just about me. I love the comments. I love when people teach me things. I get frustrated when somebody raises something really interesting and I want them to press their point, because I like being educated and informed. But it turns out that person just wanted to say something or make an assumption about something and isn't willing to pursue it. I like to feel that I'm open to being taught stuff as well. I'm a bit frustrated at the moment with all the things that I want to do on the channel. I would love to do more Sketchup videos. I know there's been a big time delay since the number 2. I'll be mentioning the number 3. Problem that I find with that is most of the videos I take as I work. And I think that's part of the distinctive of the channel. People like that it's a real business, so I'm showing you real jobs. When it comes to a SketchUp video or a talkie video, I've got to set aside time just for that. And I'm trying not to do that in the van because I'd like to improve the quality of what I put out without the background noise of the van. There's lots I want to offer you that I'm struggling to do, and I want to be honest about that, and I want to get your feedback on how we move forward. Because talking about long-term providing for my family, as we all want to do, I'm looking at the financial realities of YouTubing, and I've made, if I combine the ad revenue so far with the Buy Me a Coffee crowdfunding platform revenue, it's just under $1,000, which, bypassing all the calculations, I've worked out is around about $2.15 per hour for all my time put in to date on YouTubing. However, what I've learned from running a business is that with all my current overheads and VAT, because I am doing this through the business and as the business, so I sort of have to do it through Freebird Interiors, when I charge out an hourly rate, I'm really only going to get back from that in the region of a third of what I'm charging out. So I'm earning a little bit over 70 cents an hour for the work I'm putting into YouTube. Now, it's not that simple, I'll be honest, because I am winning work through it as well and building connections, and I enjoy it, and the value of something is not purely financial. But I think you can understand that I've got to think long and hard about how I go forward now that my time is becoming more pressured with new plans for the business and less staffing. I've got to think realistically about what I can sustain, and I don't think I can sustain 2 videos a week. I never promised anybody that I would do that, but that has become the pattern that I've tried to keep to. I am frustrated because I've got so much else I want to share with you, loads of great ideas, but I think they're going to have to wait. I am at the point of trying to monetize it a little bit more, and I'd love to be asking for monthly subscriptions. And I'm really grateful for someone who has started paying monthly on Buy Me a Coffee because they support the content that I've given so far. Would love for you to do that, but I'm aware that I'm also saying I may be slightly decreasing my content. What I'd love your feedback on is how I can give you value, stuff that's helpful to you, in a way that you feel is fair for a charge. And I'm not saying I'm going to charge for everything. I feel the value of this channel is giving stuff for free with no strings attached, and I don't want to change that. So that's why, for example, I decided to make what SketchUp content I put out there freely available, but I'm trying to give the option to buy little components or systems things. You might have seen a couple of those things. If you go to buymeacoffee.com/freebird, you'll see there's a couple of downloadable things. So I always want there to be, I don't want your arm to be twisted, I don't want you to feel like something's being hidden from you if you don't pay, but I want there to be a way for me to get fair reward. So I'm very open to your feedback about how I do that, because I had assumed that the Buy Me a Coffee model, which is very no strings attached, you just go pay a coffee's worth, either just because you want to or for a download. I'd assumed that would be attractive, but I have had a bit of feedback of people saying they'd actually like to more easily be able to sign up for a monthly payment, because then it's just done. But there, of course, needs to be a feeling of ongoing value. So there are people watching this that are much more experienced with crowdfunding and Patreon and that sort of thing than I am. So please do feel free to tell me what you think would work for you, so that I can sustain this channel and hopefully improve it. My approach from the start was done is better than perfect, and version 1 is better than version none. So a lot of the content I've put out there goes a little bit against my own values, which have always been slightly perfectionistic. But I just decided that it's best just to get it out there. I think that was the right move. I would love in future to be editing things up better and to be planning my content a little better. I'm just not sure how soon I can put that into practice with everything that's going on. I think, just to finish, I'll answer those questions people asked a little bit more deeply about how I got into this. I always loved making things as a kid. I was very academic at school, and I was guided more towards a university education. My favourite subject at school was design technology. I wanted to be a landscape architect because I love the outdoors, I love trees, that sort of thing. I was guided towards architecture, and at no point did anybody suggest that working with my hands would be a good route for me. And I just sort of thought, well, university is the route. Studied architecture, but before and after my degree, which was at Sheffield University, I did voluntary work in Romania, which I really loved, and I ended up moving out there to be a long-term volunteer. And one of the things we were doing was working with Roma Gypsy communities to do micro-enterprise, and I saw the value of teaching people real hands-on skill. And I was trying to teach them woodworking because I'd always dabbled with it, and then decided, you know, I would really love to be a proper woodworker myself. And for all of this academic stuff, and as much as I'm interested in design, I'd always been frustrated not making things myself. So when I got married and moved back to Sheffield, with the encouragement of my wife, I retrained in woodwork, and that's how I got to where I am. I never had any aspirations to run a business, and I've never been really very business minded. It's never come naturally to sell or to monetize stuff. So that's just filling in that little blank that some people had about how I got to where I am. Well, as ever in these videos, I feel like there's lots more I wanted to say, but I think this is long enough. Do give me feedback on anything. I feel I've made myself a little bit vulnerable, but when I've done this before, I've been quite pleased with how it has connected with people. If anything has connected with you, do let me know. And if you're new to this, do subscribe. And I'm not going to ask for a buy me a coffee. I'm just going to ask for that feedback on any ideas you've got about a good way forward in how I can balance my time invested with value for you and make it sustainable for me. Okay, thanks for watching.